Welcome to King County Connects, where we connect you with the important regional issues in the county. I'm Enrique Cerna. There's a new face on the King County Council. Attorney and former Special Deputy Prosecutor Rod Dembowski has been appointed to represent District 1, filling the vacancy left by Bob Ferguson, who was elected Washington State Attorney General. District 1 is the northeast part of King County, including Shoreline, Lake Forest Park, Kenmore, Bothell, and parts of Woodinville and Kirkland. And Rod Dembowski is here now to talk about his appointment to the County Council. Well, congratulations.
Thank you very much, Enrique.
So this is a temporary position. You actually have to run in the fall, but let's talk first about why you wanted to do this.
Well, Enrique, to me, it was a wonderful opportunity to serve the residents of King County. I've been a lifelong resident here and benefited by the King County government. When I was growing up, I got my health care at the King County Health Clinic in Renton because we didn't have health insurance. When I was a kid in my household, learned to swim in county parks, rode the Metro bus. And, you know, I've had a career of being involved in the community and public service, and this was a logical next step.
Public service, what's it meant to you?
To me, it's a model of servant leadership. I just feel like I've been given so much from this community, a tremendous opportunity to succeed. And so I felt it's been important to give back in whatever capacity that I could, whether it be on a performance measurement oversight committee or with the Municipal League or City Club of Seattle. And so this, like I said, is just another step in an opportunity to serve and really help folks, in my view, with this job, folks that could use a little extra help. You know, I'm particularly interested in human services funding. The county budget is, on the general fund side, has dropped in the last 5 years from, say, $30 million to maybe less than $1 million. And I just think in a county of the wealth that we have here, that we can do a little bit better for folks who need some help. And that's one thing I'm interested in leading on in the next year.
We'll talk about that a little bit more. But first I want to ask you, I say public service, but you know this is always politics when you're running for a council position or whatever.
Sure. How
do you feel about the political atmosphere these days and being on the council and knowing that that's also going to be part of the mix?
You know, I like it, to be honest. I've been involved in politics for most of my adult life. I was a White House intern and worked for Gary Locke. My wife and I, in fact, met on Gary Locke's campaign for King County Executive in 1993. And then I worked for Gary as a policy analyst when he was the county executive here at King County and learned about county issues. And I've been involved in the Democratic Party. But I've got some good broad bipartisan support. Really proud of the recommendations from leaders in the community from across the aisle. And as you say, it is political, but that's the nature of our democracy, and it's part of the job, and I actually enjoy it.
So have you found where the bathrooms are in your office and all those things? I'm sorry.
Yes. Yeah.
But tell me about that as you come in here, and obviously you wanted this position, and I'm sure you're aware of how county government works to a large degree, but I imagine there's some things, a lot of things you're finding out for the first time.
I think you know, like any new job, although I haven't had a lot of different jobs, I've been fairly stable. But like any job, you're learning the computers and the phone systems, and you got to get some help hired. I've been working real slow on that in terms of making a careful decision. I've just committed one thing in terms of hiring, for example, and that's to hire diverse staff. So I've been reaching out to communities of color to get input and resumes and taking my time to meet with the right folks. So that's taking some work. But I've already had some great meetings, attended the Regional Transportation Committee meeting, attended a Board of Health meeting, attended the full County Council meeting, and I'm diving right in on all the issues, and they're very interesting issues, from issues with our public defenders, to transit and transportation funding, to human services funding. So it's really everything that someone who's interested in these kind of issues could hope for and more, frankly. I've really enjoyed it.
You're married?
I am married, yeah.
Your father?
Yeah, I've got my dad. My dad's 84. He's born in 1928. He's a Korean War veteran, and raised my brother and me in Renton, single parent, and really proud of him. He was able to come down the day of the vote 2 Mondays ago and be there for the swearing in. So that was really nice.
That had to be pretty special. What was that like for him?
Well, you know, he and I haven't had a chance to talk about it. He's kind of stepped back and let me do my job because it has been busy, but. You know, I really credit him with giving me an interest in public service. As a kid, he always would take us to political events, whether it was when Vice President Bush came to town for a town hall meeting, or I remember the first time I got to stay up past midnight. I was a kid, and Jimmy Carter was doing a 50-state tour, and his last stop was down at Boeing Field, King County International Airport, in a hangar, and he was late. He was coming back from Alaska. And so I was, whatever I was, 8 or 9 then, got to stay up late. So I think he made sure to involve us in the community and show the importance of politics, and I think that's where the values that I have in terms of respecting our democracy comes from.
Why do you think that that was important for him to share with you? Which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, you know, I think my dad comes from a generation where that was particularly valued. He was born into the midst of the Depression, and they didn't have anything. And he remembers and still talks about, you know, President Roosevelt. My dad's named after Al Smith, actually,
really?
Who was the governor of New York, and he was born in 1928, but Al Smith was the first Catholic to run for president on a major ticket, and so there was a point of pride in his family for that. And so maybe it comes from that. History is family history, but I'm real happy that he took the time to educate us on those issues.
And a single parent raising you and your siblings.
Yep, a little unusual then for Dad to do that back in the late 70s, early 80s.
So did it take much convincing to your wife to let you do this? As I say, to let you do this?
In all candor, I would describe her as a reluctant supporter. So she's, I think Lena's known if there's ever been an opportunity to serve the public in this way, that this would be something I might be interested in doing. And but there's no doubt it takes a little bit of a toll on the family, and so it's not just, you know, the sacrifice of one, it's the sacrifice.
So you're telling me there was negotiation?
I think the negotiation was, I don't know, she said, you're going to do what you're going to do.
And you said, please?
And I said,
yes,
thank you.
Yeah.
Right.
How about your boys? Do they get this?
They do. You know, they're 8 and 11. They go to public school in the district. I'm really proud of them. And they've taken an interest. You know, my older boy, Evan, who's 11, marched with me in the Martin Luther King Jr. Day Parade. And that was a neat experience for both of us. He hadn't done anything like that. And they've come to some of the meetings, and we're there for the council interviews. And so I guess, and to some degree, things come full circle. My dad took us to those kind of events, and it's a neat opportunity to let them participate as well.
You're going to be their civics lesson and maybe an example there of things that they could use in school. You mentioned human services, and one of the things that you're proposing is a sales tax to be used for this. Tell me about that, why you think that's important. You know, you talk about taxes, and of course that always raises concerns among folks.
Right. You know, I think we've got to take it step by step, and I think the first thing we've got to do is make sure that we've wrung out of our system all the efficiencies that can be obtained, and that we've studied our system with the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare coming into play. There's an opportunity to integrate our health and human services system, and there's a task force here at the county that's working on that. I've attended those meetings, and we're going to make sure that we've built and designed the best and most efficient system we can to provide a continuum of care for those in need in the community. And I think, Enrique, once we do that, then the next step is to assess whether that system is meeting our community's needs. And my sense is, and I think the sense of most of the leaders in the community that provide human services, is that we've got a gap between the need for services and what we're able to deliver. And I think once we determine what that gap is, I'm interested in helping to fill it with additional dedicated permanent funding for human services. The sales tax issue, there is an existing law on the ballot which provides for the opportunity to impose a small additional sales tax to fund actually criminal justice and human services programs. Some of it will support our police and emergency services programs. And I think, you know, that to the extent that we have that need and we can show the voters that the need is there, and we have some accountability and oversight measures put into place, I'm willing to lead on that issue and take the case to voters and say, shouldn't we be treating those in the community who need a little help a little better? Besides human services, what do you see as the most pressing concern for you as a member of the council, but also for the county? So, you know, immediately our county right now in the next year is facing a significant crisis on transit and transportation funding. We've had a year ago or so a congestion relief charge, additional tab fee to help save Metro Transit, which our region relies on. It's just an essential component to the backbone of our system. Without it, we would be gridlocked, especially here. Hundreds of thousands of trips, you know, every day. And so that tab fee is going to expire next year, June 2014. And so I think not only for the buses, but for our roads, in the rural roads in the county, we have literally roads going to gravel. We cannot maintain the infrastructure, the bridges and roads we have today because the county road fund really has declined significantly. So I support a balanced package of new revenue options to fund roads and transit on a permanent basis. I really think we need to get off playing defense, and we need to get off these temporary Band-Aid fixes and bring back some stability to our transportation funding. So transportation is an important issue. You know, the environment is a part of that as well, and our economy. You know, ultimately, all of this, our infrastructure, both human and physical, really should be aimed at making sure we have a vibrant, healthy, growing economy, because that's the best thing we can do for this region, and I think the county needs to remain focused on that.
On the environment, you know, a lot of debate over coal trains coming through this area, going up to Bellingham, possible terminal there. Where do you stand?
You know, it's an interesting issue. I want to learn more about it. I've followed it to a large degree because it has become such an important issue. I think we've got to thoroughly study it with an EIS that looks at the impacts of that, of those proposals. There are terminal proposals all up and down the West Coast, both in Canada, up at Cherry Point, but also down, you know, at Vancouver, Washington, to export coal from the upper Midwest to Asia Pacific region. And so I'm interested in learning more and making sure we do a full study of it. It's a complicated issue. Local government to some degree doesn't have tremendous authority over the railroads. There's some national preemption issues there that give the railroads the right to run trains. And so I do think it's important to get more information. You know, I was talking to one of the leaders in the environmental community who are working on that issue. I think he said in the EIS comment period they had over 100,000 comments, or maybe it was more, but it was more input from the community than any other environmental impact study ever that they'd known about. So there's tremendous community interest in it, and I expect to keep following it and learn more about it.
What do you say to those that say, okay, we're really balancing jobs here as well as the economy? Because let's face it, the environment and our economy is the one thing most people are worried about, and jobs.
Well, I think they're right. I think we should look at, I guess I'm reluctant to pit, though, the environment against the economy. I don't think those two are mutually exclusive, and that there are ways to grow our economy with clean jobs, and Washington's going to be and is a leader on that, and green jobs and renewable energy projects. So there are ways to do that. You know, I think that there is, frankly, it's interesting. One of the arguments to support is the coal may be exported anyway. It may go through Canadian terminals. But maybe that's, you know, I guess we've got to see. There are environmental impacts of those trains coming through our communities, and I think we should just assess them.
In his State of the County address, Dow Constantine, the executive, has proposed that, and actually he's already asked the Seattle King County Health Department to Public Health to look at the issue of gun violence as a public health issue. Where are you on this concern about the growing concern about gun violence in America today, and obviously people that are worried about their ownership of guns and being impacted on this?
I agree with the executive's approach. I think it's smart to look at it from a public health perspective, Enrique. It's one of the reasons I'm interested in making sure we've got permanent, adequate, dedicated human services funding, which includes mental health care, because it seems so often that when we see these gun tragedies, that there's a mental health component tied to it, or someone didn't get the services, the counseling that they needed ahead of time. And so I think that's a starting place. I'm interested, of course, at the federal level in the universal background check proposal. I think that seems reasonable to me. At the same time, I've learned to shoot guns, and I'm not a gun owner, but I don't have a fundamental opposition to gun ownership, and of course support the Second Amendment and the U.S. Supreme Court's interpretation of that says we have a right to own guns and bear arms.
Now, as you're going to be doing a balancing act here. You're coming into a new position. You've been appointed to this. It's temporary. You got to run for it. How do you go about doing that? And still, do you see your big challenge right now is getting your name out there? and having people know where you stand?
Well, you know, there's a number of challenges. I think ultimately the politics, Enrique, and I may be a little naive on this, but I think the politics are gonna fall into place if I'm being the very best King County Council member I can be. If I'm focused on the work, and my predecessor Bob Ferguson just told me this, is be a good council member. Do the work day in and day out. Communicate with the members of the community that you're working for. And I have a district of some 220,000 people, District 1, and you mentioned the cities in the opening. This is a regional governing body, and I do view it as a job where you're working for everyone in King County. And you've got to consider the impacts of folks, say, in rural and unincorporated King County, where I spent 30 of my 41 years, bought my first house, even though most of my community is incorporated in cities. So there's a balancing act in that between the politics and the governing, but I think the politics will follow good governing, and that's what I'm determined to do here in the coming 10, 11 months.
Well, welcome aboard.
Thank you.
All right. It should be an interesting few months here, and as you get your place here on the county council and see what happens ahead. Thank you for taking the time to
Thanks,
Enrique. Talk to us. All right.
Take care.
All right. All right. Thank you for joining us for King County Connects. Please visit us online at kingcounty.gov/KCTV. I'm Enrique Cerna. We'll see you next time.